The Gospel according to Luke, the 14th chapter. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When Jesus noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by your host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, "Give this person your place." And then in disgrace you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host arrives, he may say to you, "Friend, move up higher." Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He said also to the one who had invited him, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, in case they may invite you in return, and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
You may be seated. The Benedictine Sisters of Perpetual Adoration had a monastery and retreat center. And there were many people who would come to stay with them, some for an extended period of time, weeks even, and others who would come and stay for a brief period of time of retreat, time to step away and pray, a time to meet with a director who would guide them in paying attention to what God was doing in their lives. Some people would come just for the day, for spiritual direction. And the spiritual director, who was the primary director at that monastery, was one who was pretty gifted at saying to people, "Well, why don't you schedule your appointment at this time? And then after, you can spend some time walking in the forest. And after that, you can come to the noon prayers and pray with us as a community. And after that, join us for dinner." It was a way of inviting people into a space that they thought they were too busy to even take the time to enter. And it was only after being there for that time that people started to realize the gift that they had been given. There is a definition of hospitality that says basically that hospitality is about anticipating the needs of the other before they even know those needs, and then responding to those needs in such a way that they don't even realize they had the need. It had already been met. It is a kind of hospitality that enters into other people's way of living, that in fact tends to walk in their shoes and be aware of their needs. The author of the letter to the Hebrews, as this author starts to get ready for the very end of the letter, starts to line out exactly that kind of thing. Talks about a radical kind of hospitality that walks in other people's shoes. Now, I've been told as a preacher that I shouldn't ever refer to the Greek because that's the death of a sermon, but I'm going to have to do it today. In Greek, there is a word called phileo. It is one of several words in Greek that speaks about love, different kinds of love. And phileo is the kind of love that is a deep and abiding affection and appreciation for a friend or a companion. Phileo is the root that forms the word Philadelphia. We know that to be a place in Pennsylvania, the city of brotherly love. But that place is named for this word that is about mutual love and concern. And in fact, that first sentence that we heard read today, let mutual love continue. The word for mutual love was Philadelphia. The next sentence had that phileo in it as well, another noun. And this one was philoxenia. Now, we aren't talking about those flowers in your garden, zinnias, not those. We're talking about the same root that we run into with xenophobe, where xeno is about the foreigner, the other, the outsider, the one that we too easily want to overlook and don't want to pay attention to, the people that we just aren't so sure we want to be associated with. The ones who are from outside the boundaries, whatever boundaries you want to draw. And we know that there are more than just national boundaries, don't we? And so where it says, and do not neglect to offer hospitality, that word hospitality is philoxenia. Love, deep and abiding affection and care for the foreigner, the outsider, the one who doesn't fit in whatever way or for whatever reason. Have that kind of love. Show hospitality to others. And then the author of Hebrews says, indeed, so for the prisoner, treat them as though you yourselves are also in prison. Walk in their shoes, understand their needs. And for those who are being tortured, treat them as though you yourself are being tortured. Walk in their shoes, understand their needs, respond to them, be with them. This is what the kingdom of God looks like, the author is saying. This is the practical application of all that I've been teaching you about who Jesus is. Remember, this author has called Jesus the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. This is what it looks like. And it is well grounded in the teachings and the movement and the action of Jesus. And we hear about that today as Jesus goes to this luncheon. And as he goes to this luncheon, he sits down and he sees and he offers two teachings, basically. One teaching is for the guests and the other teaching is for the hosts. And for the guests, we heard it in Proverbs too. Don't be taking the best seat just in case there's somebody who has higher honor than you and you're disgraced by being asked to move down. In those days, there was a very specific pecking order around the table. And so to claim a seat and then be moved down was great disgrace. No, rather, go and sit at the lowest seat, the farthest from that high place, and let the host invite you up. Be humble. Empty yourself of all that you bring. And let others invite you into a higher space. But the teaching for the host, this is where we encounter the radical hospitality, philoxenia, of God's kingdom. He says, when you host a banquet, don't be inviting the people. Now, you got to know something about this culture. The culture is a culture where everything is about trade. It's a, I'll scratch your back, you scratch my back kind of culture. And everything is about trying to figure out where you can get the best outcome for yourself. And so when you invite people to a banquet in that kind of a culture, and I dare say we still live in that kind of a culture to a certain extent, in that kind of a culture, when you invite somebody over, you're looking for your opportunity to work a deal, You're looking for, how can I offer them something so that they can also return the favor to me somewhere down the line? And so what Jesus says is, don't be inviting those folks. Don't be inviting the folks that you can get something from your giving. Rather, invite the very people that are too easily neglected, the people who are poor, the people who have absolutely nothing to give you, the people who are blind and lame and crippled and just don't have something to offer. Because that is what the kingdom of God looks like. It is radical. It is unsettling. It calls us to live in ways that we don't want to live. And though the word does not show up in that section of that parable, it is about philoxenia. It is about hospitality. It is about anticipating the needs of the other before they even know it, and extending and responding to those needs in such a way that they never even realize they have that need. The challenge that we live with is that hospitality is something that we have so domesticated, so tamed, that in many times when you have conversations about hospitality, it can be more about keeping ourselves comfortable than caring about the comfort of the other. Hospitality is not standing 10 feet inside the door and hoping somebody has the nerve to step all the way through the door and come in. Hospitality is not about being in the place in such a way that if somebody dares to come in, then they have to start acting and behaving just like us. Hospitality is about encountering the other, that outsider, that one from across whatever boundary it is, in such a way that we hear and we see and we recognize the gifts that they have to bear for us. The author of Hebrews put it this way: for it is in doing such as this that some have entertained angels unaware. Without knowing it, they welcomed messengers from God. Perhaps they even encountered God, God's self. And their life is changed for it. This is the kingdom of God.